School uniforms. What do I think about school uniforms? What do you, in fact, think about school uniforms? I myself am actually for school uniforms. I am, as in me fully supporting that. I stand completely for individuality, as in individuals such as children being themselves and living up to their full potential, as in them being different from other individuals and being allowed to wear things which are not the same, which makes them appear as if they're identical to other individuals. I completely support individuality, and yet I'm still for the school uniform. I'm going to tell you why. Being an artist, I feel it's only right to express yourself, whether you're another artist or even if you're not an artist. You should be able to completely express yourself, whether it's through your clothing, whether it's through your identity, whether it's through painting, drawing, skating, skateboarding, listening to different type of genres of music. Because remember, an individual is just that. There's not one individual who is in fact identical to who and what you are, and yet there have been known to be individuals that in fact exist that may look like you or even sound like you, but they don't have the same exact details such as DNA and other characteristics in which you possess. So that in fact creates individuality. It separates yourself from the complete masses. And yet to wear a uniform is to in fact wear armor. And I'm saying this, I'm speaking more so if, say, a child is growing up and they're attending a public school, and say that public school, the location of where it can be found as in accessed, has been known to be surrounded by activities such as gang violence or drug activity. That type of activity, especially the gang violence, is prone to put a child in harm's way, depending on the colors in which they selected to wear for the day, if it's not in fact a uniform. So say if a child loves the color of red and white, or just red, and say if another child loves the color of blue and white, right? But we also have known that there are in fact children, young children to be specific, that go to elementary school as well as junior high and high school. They're enrolled in all the different grades. You can span this all across. There are in fact individuals that they practice the lane of gang violence. They're not the leader and the head of, say, a ring of that activity, and yet they are in fact followers. And so to be a follower of gang activity is to bring it to school and not leave it at home. It's to not leave it in the four walls of the past the environment you just walked away from, such as home. It's to bring it into school. It's to bring it on the playground. It's to bring it to a front yard of, say, another child's home in which you don't fully support the colors of which they chose to wear for the day to school, if they're not wearing uniforms. Gang violence. It's to carry it with you on the walk home from school. That sort of thing has went on in the past, and it's still going on today. So other kids have in fact, and I've witnessed it for myself, I myself could be considered a victim of it as well in my past, of being picked on and bullied, all because red and black was one of my favorite colors, and yet somebody else that loved and admired the Crips took me as being a gang member, although I was not. I have never been a gang member. I don't associate and affiliate myself with that sort of thing. And yet to love the opposite color of, say, a gang member, and the whole rivalry with that, of not being involved, to love and enjoy, to feel your body up against the color of red, because we know that, you know, our veins pump out red, which is blood, right? To understand that that's your favorite color is to once again be bullied on by people that admire the Crips, or they're trying to idolize and be like the Crips. So you become their sole target in the fashion and the manner of them chasing you home from school, or, you know, beating you upside the head on the playground for everybody to see, and other kids joining around in that and possibly getting involved over simple stuff such as colors. It makes completely no sense. It's petty is what I'm saying. And yet children don't understand this type of affair of the petty actions, such as beating on somebody just because they're wearing a color that you don't agree with, based off of what you done seen in your neighborhood over people that's worshiping somebody, a rapper or somebody that wears the opposite color. You know what I'm saying? A lot of this stuff is based on following people from the beginning and people not using their own mind. Some might say, well, if we dress the kids in uniforms, and that's going to force them to assimilate and not use their own mind. And I feel like not completely, because remember, there's always the weekend for them, for the kids to be allowed to be themselves outside of the uniform. There's always the weekend, as well as there's always after school, where they can come out of the uniform and be themselves as an individual. And yet even in that, I still feel that if you're in that type of environment where, say, gang type of stuff is going on, it's to move out and enroll your child in a private school. That's something that I would do. I would either move out or enroll my child in a private school. Now, they might be still picked on for just going to a private school, but it's common sense that that child doesn't have a choice if the parent enrolled them. I think the best bet for that is for a parent to teach their child to for that child to let that parent know if they're in fact being bullied or being picked on or punished by other kids just for being forced to wear a uniform, and say other kids are not being forced. You know, bullying needs to be brought to the attention of the parent by the child. So it's the parent's responsibility to teach your children that, to, you know, me being your parent, you let me know if somebody's bullying you, because we'll take this straight to the dean at school to handle this, to cancel all this out. Because bullying it can completely damage a child's self-esteem if it's not handled. And not only that, many more kids are committing suicide because they're not able to handle being bullied, and yet they're crying in silence over that very thing. So once again, parents have to play their role to their child to present it to awareness so it can be settled. But I just once again feel that all public schools all across the board should in fact implement the uniform into the school curriculum and protocol setup. Because even a child that's from the suburbs could in fact be pulled in a situation like that of, you know, attending a school that's somewhat kind of far out in a location that could be kind of considered suburban, and yet maybe some hood kids, individuals, you know, might be from wherever, low income or just city kids, period, that their parents enrolled them to that school, right, for a better life. And the children is taking, say, a yellow cheese bus like we used to call them. And yet some of those children sometimes carry the manner and the form of bullying to the fact their parents don't even know that sometimes their interaction with gang activity, if it's held undercover, is in fact transferred over to that school or where they're going, that's somewhat out in a suburban area. For a child to interact with people that say living in their environment and say if it's gang activity, is to know that child is going to in fact carry that activity with them to school. They have no choice. Remember, to practice something is to play it out all times a day, and not just at home, or not just in a hood environment. I come from the hoods of hoods, so I know. I come from environments where that was one of the reasons why we moved out too, is because it was so infested with bloods. And not only that, going farther back, spending the night over one of my relatives' house, there was all type of Crips and Bloods back in like 1993, 1994, all type of Crips and Bloods, where Boys in the Hood, that movie was like the biggest, most popular thing amongst, the black community way back then. Boys in the Hood with Ice Cube, and how dude brother got shot and killed. He was supposed to go to college. That type of stuff is still play out today, and yet police task force have been cracking down on a lot of this gang activity. And yet, just because it's more silent, as in you're not hearing bullets spraying everywhere, just because it's silent don't mean that it's not there. It's always been there. More likely it's going to always be there. It's just not completely seen. Because see, criminal activity goes on in some of these, or many of these neighborhoods in which many of us have grown up in and chose to leave, right? And yet they're completely infested and laden with crime, to the simple fact when children watch that sort of thing, they tend to grow up in that. And yet to not want your family to be involved in that is to in fact move away, especially move young boys away. Because young boys, they watch and scope out everything. They think that's the most coolest thing on TV. Because remember, majority of the black films that come out, it's laden with that type of, it's sprinkled with that type of activity of thinking gun violence is cool, thinking being an alcoholic is cool, thinking just hanging out at the corner store, sipping on a liquor bottle is cool, smoking weed all day is just cool, and not doing nothing else, not picking up a book is cool. And so even with young boys, it just, a lot of these parents watch so many hours, they work so many hours, they don't have time to watch their children. So somebody has to crack down. And it's interesting within the black community, right? Knowing where I come from, the hoods of hoods, I never forget where I came from. And yet I know that during that drive-by, I was almost killed myself, as I spoke before. And yet what I don't like about the black community is when somebody present the ideal of a uniform, as in changing things and cracking down. What I don't like a lot of times is in the hood, many black families or even mothers sometimes is not with that. They feel, well, I don't like the uniform because then that's not going to let my child be who they are. And I'm like, forget all that. Do you want your child to live and survive, or do you not? Because see, for your child to be walking around, say the school want them to wear leather shoes, black or brown. That's what many of these schools, the part of the uniform is black and brown, is to prevent a child from being beat over the head, say for them just wearing Jordans that's of the color of red and white, black and white, or blue and white. Seeming those are the themed colors of people that practice gang violence. And not only that, some people that are into drugs, say like crackheads that's trying to get their fix, they'll be one of the first ones that bang and bop your kid over the head just so they can take the shoes off the child's feet and scurry away and sell the shoes for a fix, for a high. And now the child is probably half messed up, laying on the ground. Police or whoever got to come pick them up, the paramedics, take them to the hospital. Hopefully they ain't got brain damage, but just being cracked over their skull. Anytime people is sometimes putting policies through, it's not always to bring about badness. Some of these policies, such as a school uniform, can be for a benefit of children. I know this to be in fact, to be truth. Once again, look where I came from. Look where I came from. To remember where you came from is to always remember what done went down in that area. Yes. So, once again, the uniform for a young child or even a junior high student is in a sense armor. Because to look the same like everybody else knows in a sense you can't really be picked on. Because remember, we all look the same. Us standing here in uniform. Children that a lot of times come from the environment or where I came from as a kid, many of the children, sometimes their parents don't have enough money to say buy them new shoes or new clothes. Sometimes you go to gym like PE class, that physical ed, and then you're taking off your shoes and people see you got holes in your socks and stuff like that. That type of thing can form bullying, right? Or just got holes in your pants, just certain things like that. It in a sense causes bullying. And so a preventive measure with that is in fact a uniform. It is. Because when everybody looks the same, knows that nobody stands out. And yet with a uniform, I think many of them are in fact allowed to wear maybe a necklace, like jewelry piece or earrings or a bracelet, or say they're allowed to wear, their own stylish socks. But still a uniform is a uniform. I always liked the uniform. I kind of wish when I was growing up they had us wear the uniform, because a lot of that would have in fact prevented me from being picked on as a child. You can't really get away with picking on other people that look like you. You can't. But at the same time, to wear a uniform is to know your place in society, as in to know where you are at as a child, as in where you stand, in which a parent has to teach that child individuality. Because some children can become lost in looking like everybody else, to the fact they become programmed to do what everybody else is doing, and yet that's not the point of the uniform. The uniform is in fact just a protection. It is. I'm saying for the public school, because a lot of these private schools in which I was supposed to attend, I did actually attend one school, and then college it was private, but it does. It's like you're not really standing up against other people in a sense, because there's no war and there's no fight there over who got on what and who's wearing what and who's stylish, because even jealousy is in that too. Sometimes people look like this or dress like that, and then other kids can't take it. Like me, my hair, I was always picked on and hair yanked because my hair was long when I would wear it in the braids with the color beads that match my outfits, right? So like hair is something you really can't do nothing about. You don't really want to cut that. That's natural. Why would you do that? So a lot of times the kids get picked on for their clothes. Kids get picked on because they can't afford the Nikes or the Jordans. That's so not cool. That's so not cool, because what goes around comes around in the area of children that have been bullied and picked on because their parent couldn't afford whatever. Those very children that was doing the bullying, a lot of time when they got older, somehow many of them, they forgot that they were in fact bullies. But not only that, many of them grew up to not have much at all. See what I'm saying? So it don't help to bully other people, right? And I don't know, I just keep seeing that the uniform is a benefit. Somebody back in the hood, well, more than likely somebody's parent, mommy or daddy will argue me up and down, all down the block over why would you say such a thing about having kids wearing a uniform? Because it actually saves lives. If you don't think it saves lives, look at how many kids are being killed over their Jordans being taken off their feet. If you don't think it saves life, look at how many children are being murdered over mistaken identity, over the fact that that child had on a red t-shirt and some black pants with some black and red Jordans. I heard a story like that about I think it was a young boy where he had on an all red t-shirt with some black slacks. They were like Dickie slacks with some black and red Jordans. He got shot and killed on the spot. Somebody thought he was somebody else. But see, that's the colors of the blood. A lot of them wear the red shirts with the black slacks and not the opposite. So I think that's all to be said. If you can afford to move out of the hoods for not for your benefit but for your children's benefits, to not grow up in this whole gang type of thing. Like, it comes to a point where all that stuff should be cast to the side, but children a lot of times can't think it for themselves. They're prone to follow others into that activity. If it was me, once again, I know I'm repeating, I would try to move out, save money or something, move out where I could actually move somewhere else and say, scope out that school where I'm moving at in a better environment, see how that school is and what type of individual kids is going there and put them there, or just see if I can get in some type of program. There's programs for all type of financial, whatever situations. If you can't afford to move out, just send your child to a private school. Because see, even in public school, a lot of time the education is not there. It's really not good. So it's not. It really is totally not. It's completely not. I know kids that have actually lived in the suburbs and wanted their parents to send them all the way to public schools all the way in the city so that they can be around very real hood kids. And my thing is, coming from where I come from, why would you ever want to do something like that? Why would a person that's in the suburbs that grew up their whole life, why would they ever want to take it upon themselves to go all the way out in the hoods and want to live in that environment, interact with that environment, and not only that, become one with that environment? Say in the area of going to a public school, that type of stuff you stay away from. Coming from where I'm coming from, I'm saying, I lived in the hood my whole life. Gunshots you're hearing, people getting killed. You walk down the street, your neighbor done been killed. Who wanna come? See, a person that want to get involved that type of stuff is likely a individual that has no common sense. Cause there's even grown adults that sometimes that don't have common sense, that they never lived in the hood and they lived their whole life in the suburbs, and now they want to take it upon themselves to go put themselves in environments with hood niggas and all that other activity of where I've came from. Why would you want to do that? That right there is just going to completely alter your steps, as in messing up your steps in life. You can completely be set back by not continue to go forward in your purpose, by trying to go out in a very hood environment of which you're not used to. Because see, a lot of times to grow up in the suburbs is to not have you have common sense. I'm saying an individual that want to do this, but you're a naive individual. You never been about that street life. You don't know what street life consists of, and you never been around it. So to take yourself and put yourself in that environment is to be got for anything, such as people using you, people signing checks in your name, all type of crazy stuff, people running over you, all type of things. You're being in areas where police go in and confiscate drugs and somehow somebody pin it on you. That type of stuff people don't look at. It's one individual that is involved or trying to be involved, and I'm like, look, you setting yourself a failure just getting into that. To leave somewhere is to not go back unless it's to make a visitation of family, but to not grow up out there is to not go there. Especially if you're from the suburbs and you ain't never been, as in grew up in it. You just leave it alone. So, me leaving, I don't think that I'm better than anybody back home in the area of going back to the hood. I can never think that I'm better than anybody. And yet I know what goes down. But when it comes to these young kids, many of these parents got to understand you are in fact responsible for your child, as in wanting to provide them a better life. Getting them out even while you're still there. Having them read and study certain things which is outside of that gang activity stuff that's going on. And these colors and all this other foolishness. That's all petty crime. It goes nowhere. The gang violence and all that other type of stuff, that leads you nowhere but going to jail or dying. You only got two options in that. There's no better life in that. So, to look down on the actual school uniform, that's an issue in itself, because even people that know common sense exists will take it upon themselves to say, you know what, I got an option to put my child in a school uniform, or even an option of giving them a better school life so that they can have a future life. I think many people sometimes they think that once their child is in school, that's it. Like they looking at today. They not looking at the future. Because remember, many of people can't really afford even today, and yet and still, who knows what the future holds. For your child could be one of those your child could be the most brightest thing. They might be the future president. Who knows? And yet to not give them that option in the form of putting them on a uniform is a problem within itself. So I'm for uniforms. What you feel and think about uniforms? Do you think it completely prevents individuality? Do you think that, what's the word for it? Do you think it prevents children from going to war with each other? Yeah, that's all. Tell me, let me know.